Okay, so this is the final lecture for our section on personal identity, where we'll talk about the bodily continuity theory. This is part 4 of 4. So, bodily continuity theory, I think it's important that we distinguish two different views. On one view, you survive if and only if your body survives, even if it's no longer living. So surprisingly, you'll be a corpse one day, right? And this makes sense of some of the ways we speak. So, for example, when we say we mourn over someone's death and we go to see them, at the funeral. Other times we say we see their body, right? But when we're mourning over someone, mourning over their open casket, this is kind of grim, isn't it? We think we're mourning over them. But I suppose so. But it still sounds weird to say that you'll be a corpse one day because maybe our intuitions say that we either cease to exist when we die, or we continue to exist but not in our bodies. Something like the soul theory. Okay, so on this view, the only way for you to cease to exist is for your body to decompose to a certain point. Or, we're already getting grim, so let's get even more grim. Maybe if you blew up from a bomb or something, then you'd immediately cease to exist at your death, right? But we're not going to focus on that theory. We're going to focus on number 2. Number 2 says you survive if and only if your living body or organism survives. So you can't survive as a corpse. As soon as your bodily functions cease, that's actually a gray area. When does that happen? It's actually a period of time that the functioning is ceasing. But anyway, you survive as long as you're alive, basically. And some main proponents, Aristotle held to this view, St. Thomas Aquinas, Eric Olson, who's a contemporary philosopher, holds to this view. Interestingly enough, neither Aristotle nor St. Thomas Aquinas denied the existence of a soul. They thought that the body was animated by a soul. So what would the bodily continuity theory say about the various cases? Take amnesia. You lose your memories, even your entire personality. Doesn't matter. As long as your body is still living, you're still living. So this means that we can survive in a persistent vegetative state, a deep coma, an irreversible coma, right? And what about the fetus case? You don't have a brain? It doesn't matter. As long as your bodily organism is there, which it pretty clearly is from very early on, as early as conception, as late as 2 weeks after conception, you already have an independent or distinct from the mother living biological organism. And that's what it takes to be you and for you to survive. And so clearly you begin to exist from very early on. What about the transplant case, where your brain is moved from one body to another? Well, remember that when your brain is moved, or your cerebrum, your brainstem is left behind, and there's a living, breathing organism without a brain left behind on the operating table. Well, the body theorist would say you're the living, breathing animal left on the operating table without a brain. And wherever your brain goes, that's not where you go. You stay with your body. All right, so maybe that's counterintuitive. I tend to think that we would go where our personality goes. That's what my rational intuitions tell me. But, maybe the body theorist is right here. Then teletransportation. I think maybe a body theorist would disagree, but I think pretty clearly you cease to exist with teletransportation. After all, the way we've laid out teletransportation, it scans your body, retains the information for the body plan and layout, and then it completely dismantles your body. So if your body is no longer alive and breathing, excuse me, you're no longer existing because you survive if and only if your body survives. Okay. So there you go. I think the response to these cases is, by the bodily continuity theorist, is kind of clear. So actually, we're going to look at 3 arguments against the theory, and then we'll look at an argument against life after death if bodily theory is true. Argument 1: if I am my body, if I survive if and only if my body survives, then all judgments about persons are judgments about bodies. But some judgments about persons are not judgments about bodies at all. Therefore, I am not my body. Okay, so if bodily continuity theory is true, then when we say, hey, there's Joan, what we're saying is, that's Joan's body, and therefore that's Joan. So we're making a judgment about persons based on a judgment about a body. But some judgments about persons are not judgments about bodies. So suppose that you talk on the phone with someone, or even text someone, or interact with them over Facebook. Right? For all you know, it appears to you that it's, say, Johnny that you're talking to, because it sounds like Johnny, same personality as Johnny. Johnny talks about how you and he went to Disneyland together. You're like, hey, this is Johnny. But you're not making a judgment about Johnny's body when you're talking to him on the phone. You can't see his body. You're making a judgment about Johnny, that this is Johnny, based on Johnny's psychological features, his memories, his personality, those sorts of things, his beliefs. So some judgments about persons are not judgments about bodies at all. For all you know, it's Johnny in the body of Barbara Walters, right? And so since some judgments about persons are not judgments about bodies, then we are not our bodies. Okay? And so our identity over time is not grounded in our bodies. And this takes the same form as the argument against the soul theory. You can look back on that. It's directly parallel. And it uses even the form modus tollens. Okay, but the thing is, one is false. As we saw with the argument against soul theory, this argument against body theory is not good. So the claim, if I am my body, then all judgments about persons are judgments about bodies, that's not right. Remember, with the soul theory, we distinguish between identifying someone epistemically, using our minds, using evidence over time, versus what grounds someone's existence over time. And we can make the same distinction here. We can distinguish the issue of identifying or recognizing people from the issue of what fact makes it the case that one person is identical to another. So the former is an epistemological or evidential issue, the latter is metaphysical. So when you're talking to someone on the phone, yes, you recognize them through their personality, not through their body. But that doesn't mean that it's not their body that grounds their identity over time. It just means that you recognize them by something other than their body. Okay. An interesting thing is like when you wake up sometimes and you have your eyes closed, right? You're awake in the morning, but you haven't opened your eyes. You haven't seen your body, right? So how do you know you're in the same body unless you open your eyes and you look, right? Maybe you wake up in the morning and you're wondering, okay, this is me, pretty clearly me, because I have direct experience of myself. But how do I know whose body? Maybe I'm in the body of Hugh Jackman, right? Maybe I'm freaking Wolverine. Who knows, right? Okay, so, actually we do know, but what I'm saying is that, it's logically possible that at that point you're in a different body altogether, but you can recognize yourself as yourself. But I still want to say that the distinction is epistemic versus metaphysical. So I think this argument against the bodily continuity theory is not good. Here's argument 2. If I am my body, then body switching cases are not possible. After all, if you are your body, you can't separate from yourself. If all you are is just like what it is to be you is to be your body, then if your body's in one place, you can't be in another. But in body switching cases, your body's over here and you're over there. Think something like Freaky Friday or 17 again with Zac Efron, where he switches bodies with his dad. Imagine that sort of case. And I think you can imagine that kind of case. It seems possible. I mean, after all, if there's an all-powerful God, just supposing that there is, could that all-powerful God sort of kind of get funny and switch your soul with someone else's so that you are in their body and they're in your body? Okay. But if you're your body, then these cases aren't possible. Clearly, they seem to be possible based on our conception of what that would be like. Therefore, I am not my body. All right. I mean, I think this is a decent argument. It does rely on this sort of claim that body switching cases are possible. I mean, to be frank, they clearly seem to be possible to me, but have to hear what you have to say. Like when I watched the movie 17 again, I mean, I didn't come to the part where, they switched bodies, and I didn't think, that's outrageous. That's clearly logically impossible. Something like that is absurd. Sure, I don't think it happens in real life, but it's not absurd. Like a square triangle is absurd, or a married bachelor. Those things are absurd, but switching bodies with something, that's not absurd. That's not a contradiction. So it clearly seems possible. All right, so it relies on, premise 2. And I think premise 1 is clearly true. If you are your body, you can't switch bodies, because then you would cease to be you. How about argument 3? If I am my body, then I do not go with my brain in brain transplant cases. So someone takes out your brain, puts it in a new body. The person with the new body, old brain, wakes up and says, hey, what the heck happened? I'm in a new body. Right? Your personality presumably goes with your brain, your memories, your beliefs. But if you are your body, you do not go with your brain. Premise 2, I go with my brain in brain transplant cases. So the thinking behind premise 2 is that wherever your memories and personality goes, that's where you go. I mean, what are your intuitions here? Do you think you go with your brain or not? But if 1 and 2 are true, then 3 is clearly true. Okay, so that is the third argument, that if you're your body, you don't go with your brain. Obviously, you do go with your brain. Therefore, you are not your body. So, again, the bodily continuity theory suffers from a similar problem as the psychological continuity theory. And for information on this, you can see the chapter on personal identity in a very good introduction to philosophy book, Riddles of Existence. So at least, hypothetically, your body can be split into 2, like an amoeba. And then, hypothetically, once it's split into 2, it can, they can each retain their individuality and go their separate ways. If your body splits like an amoeba, which one are you? Right? Like you have one Jones and another Jones, and they each think they're the original Jones. And so this is a problem because the bodily continuity theory, based on the sort of details of the theory, can't say that one of them is you and not the other, right? They both fit the criteria for being you. But, we can use the transitivity of identity and give the same argument against the body view as against the psychological continuity theory, to show that obviously they're distinct individuals, but bodily continuity theory says they're not, and therefore bodily continuity theory is false. So that's a problem. And I think in response, it seems ad hoc, but you do need to add a no duplication clause to the definition of bodily continuity theory. And is life after death possible on this theory? It seems not. Just on the face of it, look, if you're a living, breathing body, then when your body dies, you cease to exist. If you cease to exist, then whatever is in heaven 1,000 years from now, that's not you, since you no longer exist, even if that thing looks and thinks and talks and acts like you. Right? Like, remember the example of the Kleenex box. If you destroy a Kleenex box, it's not coming back again. Right? Maybe a copy of it is coming back again. So there are different proposals, though, for life after death on the bodily continuity theory. One is given by Trenton Merricks from the University of Virginia, and he holds to the gaps in existence proposal, similar to what a psychological continuity theorist would say about life after death. They would say there can be gaps in your existence. Sure, you cease to exist at death, but God can remake you later. Just like there's a time before you're born when you don't exist, there's a time between your life and your death and your life in heaven when you do not exist. So, this makes sense. There's no contradiction in holding to gaps in existence, but it certainly seems odd. But, just because something's odd, it doesn't mean it's false. So I'll leave you to be the judge of this proposal. Another interesting proposal for life after death is by the famous metaphysician Peter Van Inwagen from Notre Dame, the body swapping proposal. So this goes as follows. Just before you die, God replaces you, i.e. your living body, with something that just looks like you, but is dead. So he takes you, your body, just before you die, and he replaces it with a dummy on earth, right? Some corpse that's not really you, but looks like you. So your living body is taken up to heaven, and it's renewed and given eternal life. So when people mourn over your body when you die, they're mourning over a copy or a dummy of your body. It's the copy that God switched out for your real body. So, here you've got God waiting on the wings by your hospital bed, of course, invisible, and you've got the family all around talking to you just before you die, and God knows everything. So he looks to see that just as you're about to die, he grabs you, namely your living body, and quickly switches out, right? Switches out you for a dummy body. That's not alive. And it looks just like you, because God is pretty good. He can make it look like you, And so what Van Inwagen says is like, hey, that's possible, that the thing they put in the casket is just a replica of you, and you are actually safely up in heaven enjoying God's presence. So he's not claiming this really happens. He's simply claiming that he can show you that bodily continuity theory is consistent with life after death. Interesting proposal. I'll leave you to be the judge of, whether it's a good proposal, whether he gets around the problem of life after death for the body view. That's the end of our session on personal identity.